Here we go. Here's a little impromptu live stream. Some stuff happened. Made me think about stuff, and I kind of finally get why Limon started, PokerSesh the way he did. It's just like after you just like go through stuff in life, you just kind of see that it's a little bit of a just like catch 22, I guess. So this is kind of gonna be an attempt at my version of PokerSesh, which is now I've been in the poker and casino industry for almost 20 years. You see some stuff and it's hard to I guess communicate how the industry works. Lyman always talks about like the poker industrial complex, the casino industry, just like gambling, advantage play in general, even betting at golf. Just like we'll start with the poker world. So after the moneymaker boom, people just, were willing to play poker. There was a peak interest because the games were most flourishing and everybody thought they could do it. If Chris Moneymaker could do it, anybody could do it. Which was not untrue, because in the end, if you're dealt winners, like if you're dealt nutted hands in poker, it's like really not too hard to play. You just put money in and then you're dealt the winning hand. Even the best player in the world, whoever it is, or the top X players, let's say, I don't know, Limitless, Linus Love, Thirds, who I don't know who it is. If they're always dealt the losing hand and their opponent's like dealt a winning nutted hand that they're never folding, the quote quote better player can never win. We've all had losing sessions. We've all had like run bads of like, X hands, which is like the thousands and potentially even the 10,000 range online. I mean, I've heard of like winning players going on 100K hand down swings in PLO. The year 2020, with the COVID happening, the quarantine happening, starting from March, aside from like, online delivery systems, online games, Zoom, it's been really tough. Like I know people who've lost their businesses around me and closed down, and just like it kills them. Even during the first reopening, when they had spent a lot of resources to make sure their stuff was kosher, like scanning the forehead, checking temperature, and masks and everything, then they shut down again. They were already hurting for revenue, and they're hurting for revenue, and then they had to spend more money to try to legitimize their business. And then obviously there's disputes of staying in, not staying in, which caused riots, and then mask, no mask, which has caused a lot of dissension. And it's just been catastrophic. And we found the demand for poker, whether in online form or live form, still is there. Like people are willing to slave through masks, dividers, or like home games just to like play cards. So the demand of this game is here. I'm on a 5-minute delay, guys, so sorry. I can't answer real time. But thanks for tuning in. Which brings back to at least what I could add to PokerSesh, which is my observation of the poker industry after being a house player and then dealing with Live at the Bike, producing shows, and then when quarantine hits, then the online environment, the private game sector, and home games. There's 3 predominant issues, I guess. 1 is inclusiveness, 2 is exclusivity, and 3 is elitism. So when it comes to ideally what games and say the casino industry is, poker, it's that anyone can play. If you have a certain basic requirement, which is whatever, you put money on the table in the casino sense and you don't act out of line. Thanks AJ and Andrew Nicholas. Shout out to you guys. It's games are supposed to be inclusive. Like, if you have the materials, you have the resources, you have the basic entry, you can play. In recent times, it's 2020 now, so starting a couple years ago, or even as early as 2013, like when I was getting shut out of games, or I wasn't getting the text, it became more of a privatization of games, like the fun players, and then certain people are allowed, like certain pros, so to say, and there's like a hierarchy and order, and wise people that were ahead of the curve headed towards that kind of like private game sector and just like recruited people and then had their own games, and then it slowly moved away from the public casinos. So that's the transition between inclusiveness, where poker and say the casino industry, or let's just say poker, was supposed to be inclusive and just allow anybody to play, to being exclusive and only certain groups can play. Cool kids, people who, or Rex, or people who people who got along, I guess, specific social groups. And it's not even to say that those people in the social groups all get along. It's just exclusive. It's just a club. So once it's in exclusivity and elitism are separate categories, whereas like there's certain hardcore players, especially in the high stakes realm, that talk about like elitism, like who's good at poker. Like in Phil Hellmuth's case, he's like, I'm the greatest. Why? Because he has the most bracelets and he's been around the longest. In a way, it's not wrong. It's surviving an industry. Like if we're talking about longevity, like people like Phil Hellmuth, or especially Doyle Brunson, Um, yeah, if the judgment of a poker career is longevity plus like, navigating as high stakes as possible and making a living, maybe that's the metric. And then there's another metric of elitism, like the super high roller bowls or the highest cash game stakes, where, oh, if you crush those games, you're the best. Like somebody like Limitless will just be like, I'll play anybody, any stakes, whatever, any game. But I don't know. Maybe he's a Nolan Roland specialist. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's elitism. And elitism, like poker, is just not a meritocracy. The only thing close to meritocracy is like a tournament where a lot of people can buy in, kind of like, Phil Hellmuth defines poker greatness, so to say. And he's one of the best, if not the best, considering he has the most bracelets. But then these other forms are like, oh, I'm the best because I can play anybody. High stakes poker, cash game, or the super high roller bowls, and I can beat everybody. Which is valid. It's valid to say that there is an elite side to poker. The problem is televised poker, whether it's in the form of the World Series of Poker, Live with the Bike, the WPT, Poker Go. It's giving a glimpse of not necessarily the only meritocracy is like who wins the World Series or the WPT. Like when something like Live with the Bike, which it's a show, so it does have a certain amount of like exclusivity and first come first serve. Then it heads in that direction, or then like the Friday games or the high stakes games, then it heads to exclusivity and elitism. In the end, like, poker is just like one of many subject matters, industries in the world, like whatever, hundreds of thousands of industries. And the fact that there's even interest in it is kind of like, I guess, a blessing for people interested in poker, because there's like an industry that revolves around it. So, what's poker supposed to do? Like, since quarantine, I haven't played that much online. I have played, and I'm actually, down a little. But the point is, like, online poker, since its inception, has been like inclusiveness, where anybody in the world could play online. But there's like, a 6 max or a 9 max in the different games. So then there's wait lists. So yeah, and then it comes to a point where there's software where once a non-regular sits down, then the seats fill. Then there was software like Hold'em Manager, Poker Tracker, and now real-time assistants and solvers that now weed out, like, they just destroy inclusiveness, because the people who are poised to lose are just going to lose really fast, and then the inclusiveness becomes exclusiveness, and then the elitists like come out on top. And that environment, if it were like a vacuum and just like everybody is in the same environment, just like everybody is like a survival of the fittest, and then there's only one, than, you know, like winner takes all, like a tournament. But that's not what happens. Things get segregated into like the casino sector, tournaments, private games, and then people are like willingly putting money on the table in these different sectors. So for the sustain of the poker industry, it feels like there definitely needs to be media interest, because that's how, and you know, to a certain extent training, to a certain extent the audience watching poker and playing poker, interest in poker, need to learn the next step to get better, so they start quantifying that they are better than the field, or they're ahead of the field, or they want to test their ability against the field. If you play poker for a living, you want to just play against weaker competition. There's got to be a juncture when you're learning where you want to, you know, see where you're at, test yourself, and play against people you perceive as good and see how you stand. But for the most part, in order for somebody to sustain their existence in poker, you got to play in like weaker fields, or just have expendable income playing poker, and just accept that you're most likely going to lose this dollar amount, but you know, you want to play some cards. So now in 2020, that's where the dilemma hits. Like, poker has skill. It also has variance, and it also has a larger gambling element than, you know, many industries, save like business or like invention or discovery, in which you can't control what gets discovered and when. And then even if it does get discovered, it's about the usefulness of the world. Like, there are a lot of brilliant people who created things, like, you know, say the prototype for the iPhone. Other people have like tried to create and manifest and distribute and monetize a product like the iPhone, but Steve Jobs was the one who succeeded. So in that sense, all the people before him that tried a similar product and failed, gambled, and lost, they all thought they had something. They were winning players. Maybe they were the stepping stone that the iPhone needed before, you know, the iPhone was slated to succeed. The attitude that probably would help the poker industry last longer or be healthier is that people go in either expecting to lose the dollar amount they're willing to lose, or you only seek games where you think you're a winning player. So obviously when you get 9 people at a poker table and rakes going down the drain, only the top couple players are going to win. So provided that the lower end is not using expendable income, things are going to get really bad. Is why, you know, pros are not going to really play pros unless there's some matchup where there's like a higher end pro and a lower end pro, and they want to butt heads until, you know, somebody's losing their limb or their life. I think predominantly an attitude to help the poker industry survive and poker to survive in this world is idealistically not have people burned. Like, it ruins the reputation of poker when it ruins their lives, which is usually in professional poker more so than casual poker, or people who can't control their gambling. And that goes against what professional poker players need. Professional poker players need as much expendable income as possible. So the pro player is a bit at odds with the growth of the industry and the health of the poker ecosystem, because unless they're contributing in some way, they're just taking out of the poker community. And this is where, Limon's PokerSesh mentions that poker pros are leeches unless they somehow, give value to the community, to the table, like entertainment. But then if you're, headphones on, you're being toxic, then you're just, as he would say, the nut low, I guess, for these environments. So recently, due to COVID, I definitely prefer to, be in the legal side of casinos, but they're all closed. So I have attended some home games. And several of the people mentioned to me, they're like, oh, I thought you were a limit player. I'm just like, well, I've done the best monetarily in no limit, although it was a long time ago during the poker heyday. But, that stuff doesn't go away. And, there's a lot of solver stuff going on now. And, people have just gotten better in general. But I found myself in these games just doing well, getting paid compliments in which I didn't want these compliments. And it was just like the perception of what people are has such a big impact on how welcome you are. There are players better, if not much better than me, with more acceptable images. I talked about this in the last few days. Today's December 5th, 2020. And not for better or for worse, definitely for worse, it looks like I visually look like I'm there to win. I'm not there to screw around. I'm not there to have fun, which, due to my gaming background, I play to win. So even if I'm not the best player in the world in any given environment, I am playing to win. And it's very devastating if you're playing for money. You're playing to win and hoping to count on that income, and it doesn't work out. Like, you either lose or bad luck, or you're just not good enough to beat the field. So I guess that was kind of put to rest in these private environments. Like, verbally, dealers and players were complimenting my ability, in which, before I started because propping and limit hold'em pays more, then that's where, in the last couple of years, and even when I was doing high stakes poker, like I would say like 50% of my action was in limit hold'em, and then the other 50% was spread between like 7 card stud, no limit. I wasn't really proficient in high stakes PLO or mixed games, but I did it from time to time. But this is the trap that I hit, and I had talked with several people, and they're like, Wayne, just act friendlier. And I've been down that route. In like 2013, no one said I wasn't friendly. It just gets to an impasse where playing poker for a living, it's just, you need more than being technically sound. Yeah, Andrew Nicholas is correct. If people have backers with expendable income, which happens a lot in the staking world, that's a thing too. But yeah, it's reliant to survive in the poker industry. It's reliant on expendable income or additional skill sets. You can't just like be the quote unquote most skilled player in the world, and if nobody wants to play you, nobody's going to play you. Poker works the opposite of other industries. The better you get, nobody wants to deal with you. I mean, maybe coaching, but nobody wants to play you because they're going to lose. And it's not so much in a sport, so much as a sport in the sense that like, poker tournaments, the best players don't win like all the time. There's a lot of capable players, a lot of plus EV players. There's even some players that are considered some of the best tournament players and never won major events. So it was just a huge epiphany. And then what was interesting in perception is one of the players there, who's a pro player, said that the perception is I'm just a limit player, which is fine. And then when he saw me play no limit, and a lot of no limit players in that game saw me play, I guess their opinion of me changed. And it was just perception's such a big thing. There are people that are in LA. I'm just going to talk about LA, poker pros in LA, that have thrown shade at me, which is okay because nobody's universally liked. But the shade thrown is more the shade thrown is like what different people perceive as what poker should be. Should it be a meritocracy? Should it be inclusive? Should it be exclusive? Should it be elitism? If you're playing poker for a living to make money, it's a personal endeavor. Somebody like Daniel Negreanu, who is sponsored by PokerStars, doesn't want to grind, has all his buy-ins subsidized when he was subsidized by PokerStars, and now he's at GG Poker. Does that deserve the respect of somebody who just like sits at an open table online and will just like play anybody for the highest stakes? I've brought up before on Live the Bike, like if I were tasked with, whatever X million dollars Negroni was getting paid by PokerStars, and all he had to say was like, jokingly say, more rake is better. But basically just like be an ambassador for PokerStars and get people to come on and play, and consequently, once they put money on the site, it goes down in the rake, and the site makes money. If that turns out to be what you were tasked to do and you got paid X dollars, what's the dollar amount where you kind of sell your soul and be like, screw it, I don't want to grind for a living. Hell, I may not even be a winning player against like top pros, so why don't I just get sponsored by a poker site, and get people to play on it, and then I take a piece of the rake or whatever flat fee or scaling deal I have. And then he gets shade thrown at him for taking that deal, in which most of the people criticizing him would likely take that deal. I don't know. As we get older, when you're a minor, say 18 and under, your parents are supposed to take care of you to certain degrees. And then, when you become an adult, you're supposed to like explore your own skill sets, try to make your own money, and then maybe you have dependents through a family, or starting a family, or some family members that need help. Then you have to make money to make up for that. So it's not just making money for yourself. You have to make a decision to make money to support other people. So for the high and mighty who are like, oh, this person's a sellout, or this person took this deal, or just doesn't believe in things, like, okay, well, what if that person has like dependents? Like, we know Danny Negroni's mom died, and it meant a lot to him. And I'm hoping most people listening to this, your mom means a lot to you. Mine does. If it gets to a point where you realize that you need to make money for dependents, or if something goes wrong with your own health or dilemmas, or the health of people you care about, normal job may not cut it, or cut it too close. Multiple jobs may cut it too close. Playing poker for a living is high risk. Something can go wrong. And if you can't pay, medical bills for yourself or people around you, then you're just going to lose them. One of the cases in point was like Juan Lee, legend, just used to have like unlimited pink chips, played a 10-20 no limit, and bigger a lot of times. Had Barry Greenstein on the podcast. Juan Lee died of cancer. And before he passed, he was like vomiting blood in like trash cans, and he didn't want to spend his bankroll money to go to a doctor. And unless you're one of those few people that really do, with skills or other endeavors, make millions off poker, it's a very small percentage. Very, very small, like a fraction of a percent. Eventually, you're going to be of age where you have to face a dilemma. Say you have a 20K bankroll. Say you have a 100K bankroll. Optimistically, and that's being optimistic. Even a 20K bankroll is optimistic for, quite a few people claiming to be professional poker players. What if you now have a medical bill that costs $5,000, $10,000, and you don't take it, or you don't get the right diagnosis, like, wanted, and then you pass away from it? What was the point of this whole endeavor? Did you really live the poker dream? I think Limon he's had this narrative for the last couple of years. The poker dream, probably dead. You could definitely play poker for a living, and if you navigate the world really well, you can do really well. But it's better if it's one of your sources of income, because not all of us can be like Dan, Zach, Garrett, and Andy and just like crush. And if you do, even if you are a crusher, then you still got to run good. I mean, there's people I know, like, like you, who are competent, just like ran. I know him personally, so I know he's not going to BS this stuff where he has run below par. And there are certain, pro players that run above par. And the biggest proof is, like, if you take the exact same person, you put them at a single poker table, their results are going to vary, and it may not even out. If after 10 years, the exact same people at the same table dealt different cards in different seats, there's just going to be a range of outcomes. And then you have to choose, do you want to be at the fate of these cards, or just like maintain this like bankroll in order to like do this for a living? What kind of sacrifice to your future stability when you get too old to deal with this? What will it be costing you? So shouts and Andrew Nicholas, shouts and moms. So this whole private game sector, whereas like pros are unhappy that games have been privatized. Well, what do the pros bring to the table? Clearly, the game host is bringing value, which is having lesser players play against each other and not be predatory. I was just confronted today of just like, what do I bring to the table? Like, as a prop, I'm filling seats. Before the masks, I would converse more. I would try to, entertain. I would try to bring value, do stuff for Live at the Bike. Now it's just like, as a professional poker player, if you take a seat, what value are you going to bring if theoretically you're supposed to win? And do the operators in a semi-inclusive environment have the gall to make this exclusive and not elitist? So that's the scam of the poker industry. The better you get, the less welcome you are. It was really funny and interesting because when quarantine started, I had 0 people reach out to me, to play in home games or apps until, I got invited for mixed games. which, I'm clearly going to be a dog because I'm not up to date with that stuff. So, yeah, part of it is image, because I'm, rusty. I'm not the player I used to be. I haven't necessarily kept up with all the competitive stuff, but, going in these home game environments in the last month, in November, was clear that I will still do well, and the perception is, whether overrated or not, that I will continue to do well. And what am I there for? And I guess that's the impasse. It's like, are we at a point where it's like the reverse meritocracy of, like, say, applying to a school or applying to a job, whereas, like, applying to a school or a job, in order to get that threshold, you're supposed to be of a certain standard. And in poker, it's the opposite. You're supposed to demote your standards as far as possible so that you're welcome in the game. It's a bit of an unstoppable phenomenon because as interest dies down, the game gets tougher, the rate gets higher, there's less expendable income, just less money is going to be put into the poker community. So, are you supposed to make money from it by increasing your skills or increasing your value in the industry? Lucky Luciano, this correct. People do have a warped idea of success, and especially things are just like more and more competitive every day, and we're globalized and everyone can see who the quote-unquote best are. It just increasingly becomes more difficult to get there, I guess. In any case, in closing for this rant is recently got wind that, certain people I thought I was okay with, I guess, were not okay. They weren't okay with me. So in that sense, I will be shifting from an inclusive environment to a more exclusive environment. Not quite elitist, but we can't choose. Like, nobody's universally liked, once again, and we can't choose who doesn't like us. And if they don't get along with us, it is what it is. Life's too short. There's over 7 billion people on this planet. Like, even within groups of friends or coworkers, there's going to be a lot of discord. So, for the people that, don't get along with me, but we have to share space, I'm just going to, adopt just a no-speak policy. And if they want to throw shade at me, then they can be one way. And it's not so much I have ill will towards them. In fact, most of them is just like, definitely disagreement, maybe friendly disagreement, maybe irreconcilable differences. But I'm just gonna, I guess, do a real life block. Like, the internet connects 3.5 billion people. When you're in the inclusive casino arena, you're supposed to deal with as many people as possible. But because, like, I'm more accessible and I have to be there, then fine, I have to interact. But I can just be polite and just be like, I don't really want to talk. Especially the people who clearly proactively don't want to get along with me. So it's just an adjustment of the times, and COVID has not helped. Like, I've definitely been snappish. Anxiety, like social media, has really screwed me in the head in a lot of ways, and I see it screwing with other people's heads. Like, even in the mask, no mask, or the politics battles, the Trump versus Biden. Like, the algorithms and the narratives of people supporting one or the other just goes down a rabbit hole and just creates resentment and vilifies the other side in a way that existed before but wasn't as drastic. So that's kind of it for today. I guess some people that I wasn't getting along with, we can phase each other out. Life's too short to go down these things. We don't have to talk to each other. We don't need to antagonize each other. And I guess they have their points, I have mine. And I get that my narrative may be detrimental to theirs, but, you know, we all gotta do what we gotta do. So maybe this is kind of the standstill that or the Nash equilibrium that had to get there. So that's the rant. Leave a comment below, especially if you disagree. Smash that thumbs up, subscribe. Thanks, guys.